All right. Well, good morning, church. Good morning. And good morning to those who are joining us on the live stream or later on this week. Thanks for coming to Stuff I Learned on Sabbatical. I've got a lot of stuff to show you. I'm really excited. I made it a brisk 88 slides, so that's it. We're not gonna overdo this thing. But the first thing I wanted to show you, and I battled whether or not to do this part or not, but I decided that I should because we should all lean into grace above perfection. Somebody say amen. Amen. So what you're about to see is the equivalent to about a 10-year-old's piano recital. Are you ready for that? All right. Here we go. I never studied piano until the sabbatical. So this is what I was able to learn in about 3 months. Far be it from me to not believe, even when my eyes don't see. And there's a mountain right in front of me that will be thrown into the midst of the sea. 'Cause through it all, my eyes are on you. Just through it all, it is well. 'Cause through it all, my eyes are on you, and it is well. Try that. It is well. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and wind still know His name. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and wind still know His name. The waves and wind still know His name. It is well with my soul. 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 So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and wind still know His name. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and wind still know His name. The waves and wind still know His name. Sing with me. It is well with my soul. 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 So it's a work in progress. It really brought me a lot of joy to be able to sit down at a piano and plunk out some chords here and there. Felt like I was making progress, felt like I was doing something. And music always feels worshipful. It feels like the language of the soul. So of all the things, that one's it's harder than it needed to be. Like I could have done an easier song, but that's the song that just resonated with me the whole time I was on sabbatical. Well, we're going to run through some slides here. The first introduction into what it was like to be on sabbatical and to travel so much, I started thinking about the various modes of transportation that I took just in those 3 months. And here's some of them. Took an airport tram. I took a cruise ship. I took a ferry boat. I took a metro. I took a jet ski. I took a roller coaster. Took a golf cart with Randy. I rode in a taxi in Italy, which is terrifying, even way more than the roller coaster. I took a water taxi. I took a bus. I'm getting some lag here. I broke it. Did my singing break the live stream? I took a bus with my name on it. I don't know why they called us the Daniel Group. That seems odd, but that's what they did. We took a tender boat, which is a different kind of boat. We took an Uber up to the top of Santorini. I think you're going to have to do it, Mark. We took a gondola up to Santorini, and then when I was in Minnesota, guess what? I took a gondola. And also in Venice, I rode in a gondola. We took planes, we took trains, and we rode in automobiles. This is my buddy Eric, who drove 3 hours out of his way to worship with me in Minnesota for an 8:30 service. That guy got up at 4:30 in the morning to come worship with me. Sign of a good friend and a church nerd. Just that Venn diagram overlapped personally. And last but not least, we walked. 26,000 steps was the most we did in any one day. This is my best friend Steven, who palled around Italy with me, and that guy got up and ran every morning. So I'm exhausted, and he's like, I'm gonna go for a brisk 6-mile run. And then the next day, that same day, he'd come back and shower, and I'd be like, hey, I think we should go up there. He goes, nah, I already ran up there. There's not much to see. I'm like, oh, okay. Thanks, I guess. There were 5 goals in my sabbatical. And the first one was to study music, as you saw there. So I had set up to take voice lessons, which is this one. I love this picture because that guy looks relaxed, doesn't he? That guy doesn't have any bags under his eyes, no stress in the world. What a lucky duck that guy is. That guy woke up, took the kids to school, and was like, all I have to do today is go to one voice lesson. So I did voice lessons, which was great. I studied piano with Brent, who's in the 4th row here. How did I do, Brent? Are you proud of my progress?
We're doing well.
All right, great. Thanks, Brent. And some of you know this guy who taught me guitar. This is Tom Newhauser. And I realized, Tom and I've we've talked on and off, but never in depth. And then we started just playing through his gigs because he's a professional musician. We started playing through his gig book. We're the same age. We graduated high school in 2002, and we only found that out because the deep cuts of his playlist could only have been made by somebody who was coming of age in those times. So I'm like, you were playing, these are my bangers, man. These are my jams. I'm like, how old are you? And so that was super cool, and he's an amazing teacher too. And finally, I actually took some lessons with this guy. Who knows this guy? This is Nathan Sliwa, who was our minister of contemporary music before Justin. And he and I are friends, and throughout the pandemic, we get on FaceTime and we watch Survivor together. That's sort of one of our things. And so we thought if we can do that, we can study music that way too. And I actually took a visit out to see him in Berkeley, California. And so we did this one live. And so I got to pay him a little bit and sort of help him with his seminary too. So That was really wonderful. So the first goal was to study music, which, as you can see, was really a lot of fun. The hardest part was guitar, because I've been playing guitar incorrectly for 20 years, and unlearning is much harder than sitting down at an instrument you've never played before and plunking your way through. So I really went all over. The first thing that I did was go back to my seminary, where I graduated 10 years ago. And by the way, over Sabbatical, I celebrated my 10-year anniversary of ordination, which was really cool. That was really cool. And being able to celebrate that anniversary by going back to my old seminary and finding my picture on the wall, which Nathan then took a picture of. This is the picture of Nathan's from 2 days ago, which was my birthday. And he went and found my picture in the hall and took a selfie with my picture. And you could see he even circled it and then sent it and then said, "Happy birthday to this guy," with the thumbs up. So appreciated, Nathan. I told you the first thing I did on Sabbatical was go back to school, go back to seminary, which has changed an awful lot. They literally sold the property that I went to. They literally sold the apartment complexes that I lived in. And they moved to this sort of office space, which is downtown Berkeley. One of the classrooms literally looks over City Hall. So it was sort of this thing about how church should also be involved in the world, and we shouldn't just be thinking about our theology in a bubble, but in relationship to the world around us. And I have to tell you, it's pretty darn powerful to sit in a classroom with City Hall right there and have that backdrop there. I sat in on the class of a brilliant professor that I did not have. He's new to the seminary, Dr. Adam Braun, who teaches the Gospel of Luke. And I sat in on his class, his 3-hour lecture, and took about 10 pages of notes, because everything I thought I knew about the Gospel of Luke, he sort of worked against, right? The way that I was taught about the Gospel of Luke is that it's all about hospitality. And in fact, I've taught that here in this Pastor Daniel's Bible study 3 years ago about how the Gospel of Luke is all about hospitality. And it is. But also I learned from Dr. Braun that is a very privileged position on the Gospel of Luke, which I didn't know, right? It's what I was taught. So sometimes we have to unlearn a little bit of what we're taught. But he went through the entire... Coleman, could you get this door? Thank you, sir. I know I picked you up mid-sip there. Appreciate you. The Gospel of Luke is all about money, and it's about the haves and the have-nots. And Dr. Braun's got me convinced that this old dog learned a new trick here, because the manger scene is a story about how there was no room for them in the inn. Not because there was no room, like all the hotels were booked up, but because everyone in the city of David knew Joseph. And Joseph's girlfriend was pregnant and they weren't married. That's why there's no room for them, right? And so who gets invited? The haves or the have-nots? The have-nots. Who comes to see them? The shepherds, right? Who are the lowest people on the totem pole. Being a shepherd's a really bad job, like public school teacher, shepherd, right? Like the way people treat you. So that was remarkable, and I was buzzing from that class. And we went to lunch, and I'm like, "Nathan, oh my gosh, this was crazy. Oh man, that was so cool." He was like, "Can we not talk about school?" That was really cool. So I had this great trip to start off the sabbatical in Berkeley, California. I spent 5 or 6 days there with Nathan, living that life. And there was not a dull minute there. Nathan had scheduled everything. He had planned everything meticulously. We made it to the beach. We made it to the mountains. We made it to the park. We went to Golden Gate Park, which I had never been. So when I moved to Berkeley, I was 24 with a baby and no money. So I did nothing. But I went to all of the little kid parks around. And Nathan's like, "Oh, you never went to San Francisco and went to a comedy show?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Okay, we're doing that. You never went to Dorothy Park, whatever it's called?" I was like, "No." He's like, "Okay, we're doing that." So we did everything. We even went to a speakeasy, which I didn't know. Apparently that's a thing. People still go to speak. Did y'all know this? People still go to speakeasies? All right. Well. So that was a great week. Then the sort of the big middle chunk of the sabbatical was this really extravagant trip that was paid for by the Lilly Foundation. Some of you may remember I was awarded a grant. We wrote a proposal. I had a great grant writing team here at CTK, and we spent collectively probably 100 hours applying for that grant, still not thinking we were going to get it. And that email, Cindy sends me this email. I was like, hey, you got the grant. I remember reading the email about 5 or 6 times. You know when you're looking for the bad news? Like, where's the bad news sentence? And I skimmed it like 4 times. I'm like, I can't find the bad news. And I was like, all right, I'm going to have to really read this thing to find the bad news. And it turns out I didn't find it because it wasn't there. I'm happy to report that not only did we get this grant, which was great, and it covered Pastor David Kildee, who covered my position while I wasn't here. But since then, when you get it, every pastor in the world reaches out to you to help write their grant. So I helped 3 people write their grants, and 2 of them got it. So pretty excited about that, and being able to pay that forward. I think we've got the winning recipe here, or certainly a close way to it. So the grant's substantial. It's $50,000. So that's how we were able to pay for all of this. Here's a quick map. It's a quick map, but it took me about 45 minutes to put together. So I hope you appreciate it, even in its brevity. The number of places we went. The blue on this map are places that I led a group from CTK, and you can see we started in the north of Greece, and that right where it said Bulgaria, right under that, is Philippi. So we were going in the footsteps of Paul. Paul is the New Testament writer who wrote a bunch of letters. Well, those letters were to people, and those people lived in cities, right? So Philippi is where he wrote the letter of Philippians. Thessaloniki is where he wrote to the people of Thessalonians, right? Ephesus is where he wrote Ephesians to, right? I know some of these things are obvious, but you sort of never assume. Then we made our way down to Athens at the bottom. We hopped on a cruise ship, and we went to the Greek Isles there. So the isles we visited were Santorini, Mykonos, Ephesus, which is in Turkey, Crete, did I say that already? Crete, Patmos, which is where the book of Revelation was written. And am I missing one? I think that's it. So here's the tour group that we took to CTK. Not everybody made it in this photo. Sorry, Randy and Cindy. I know you're there. You're just next to Vicky there. And I just could not seem to make it fit. Okay. And of course, George and Gina are also there, and I did not mean to cut y'all out. It just did not format the way I wanted it to. I tried for a long time. But the 4 of you especially were not the ones I was trying to get out of this picture. But anyway, I was able to bring my lovely wife with me, which was really great time to be adults and to only have to get ourselves dressed in the morning and only have to ask, have I eaten breakfast? And, all of that was just a really gift. Also, next to me and my wife are my parents who came on the trip. Because my trip was funded from the grant, I was able to give my dad a free trip. And a lot of you know my dad has pretty severe cancer, and this was he'd never been to Europe, so this was his bucket list. And he has not stopped talking about it. And my mom, of course, is there. She's a Lutheran pastor as well, and these materials made it into many of her sermons. I'm just going to give you some really highlight moments. The first day we went, and this doesn't look like much, but this is the actual jail cell that Paul was jailed in Acts chapter 13. He was literally imprisoned there. And so part of me as a skeptic showed up to all these places thinking, all right, these aren't going to be real. Do you know what I mean? You get that sense, like, you go to Jerusalem and they're like, Jesus was born here and here and here, right? So I was going to be really skeptical about that, and it turns out that no, this was also an abandoned city because of earthquakes. And guess what happens in Acts chapter 13? Paul's in prison, and what happens? There's an earthquake. And rather than running away, Paul stays because he knows that the truth is going to set him free. And the jailer can't believe it and starts to ask questions about his own faith, right? I say this all the time, but one of the hardest things to do is to take the high road. But I'm still convinced that it's worth it. after the month I've had, I'm losing a little bit of conviction on that, but for now, I still believe that taking the high road is worth it. And this was a really powerful moment for me. This was like our first day or our second day. We're sleep deprived. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. Like, Paul really did this. And every time at the beginning of the day, I'd pick up a microphone on the bus and I'd read a little bit of Acts or Thessalonians, and I got choked up just feeling the presence of being in those spots. We went to a lot of the great places that you visit when you're on the tour of Paul, including this one, which was a really beautiful, gorgeous city of Corinth. So Corinth is on the water, and it overlooks a place that's very far away to get to by land. It's like 5 or 6 or like 4 or 5 hours by land, but by boat you can get there in an afternoon. And across the way is Delphi. Are Grant and Marge here? Grant? Hey, we got Delphi's right here. Across the way is Delphi, which in itself is not a Christian site, but has all of these altars, right? And one of the things that sort of beautiful about Athens or about Greece is that the way one worshipped was a little bit limitless, right? There's a beauty, I think, to the pluralities of gods that even though I don't particularly share that worldview, the open-mindedness, I think, could make its way into our Christianity as well. The willingness to not have it all figured out. And so Corinth was also a place that Paul made it to. And so, okay, we're making all of these stops on a chartered bus. We've got hotels booked. We've got restaurants booked. We've got everything booked. And here we're thinking about Paul on foot as a stranger in a strange land. He's not native to this area at all. This is a dangerous trip for him. That was really cool. One of the other highlights for me was Patmos. This is me and my wife. I don't know why I put the sweater. I never do that. I have no idea. And if it hadn't been like a great picture, like I would have never shown it to you. I don't play tennis. I got nothing. I have no idea. But Patmos is where the writer John, not the gospel writer John, but somebody from that camp, whose name is also John, wrote the book of Revelation from a cave here. And you can go in the cave. And he was exiled here. So again, the dangerousness, the riskiness of the ministry that these folks were doing was really powerful. And to be here on Patmos, I mean, once you're marooned on Patmos, unless you can build a good boat, you're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. And so this dream of Revelation, which is a dream that he wrote, it's not a future prognostication. Everything in the book of Revelation is written past tense. And then I wept, and then I saw, right? They're past tense things. How American Christianity has made that to be a future prognostication is a poor reading of the book. By the way, also, just because it bothers me, the book is called Revelation, not Revelations, okay? Also, the book is called Psalms, right? But a particular psalm is not Psalms 100, okay? Just so we're all clear about that. And just while I'm at it, this right here is an aisle spelled with an A. That is an aisle spelled with an I, okay? All right? One of the other beautiful moments was we got to visit the baptistry of Lydia. Lydia is a biblical figure. While Paul is in Philippi, he walks. Again, we took a bus the distance that he walked, and he meets a woman named Lydia. And it is a further, not an opinion, not even a strong opinion, but literal proof that women ran the early church, that they were equal to men in every way, if not more so. The baptism of Lydia is proof of that, because Lydia is the very first person to be baptized in all of Europe. And in Acts 14, you read the story of the baptism of Lydia. And again, this was another spot where I saw it on the itinerary, and I'm like, that's not going to be the real place. No, it's the real place where Lydia is baptized. And some people have sort of made this cut-in of where the river bends around so that you can wade into that water and experience baptism. So this is me putting the sign of the cross on. Randy, hey, you showed up. You were there. We believe it. And our buddy George is in there in the background as well. So that was really a beautiful moment. And I think everybody from the trip experienced this baptism as a really profound experience. Well, one of my favorite stories that is really not something I learned, but an experience, was on Mykonos. Mykonos is a beautiful island right now full of all of the Russian oligarchs and their very big yachts because they're trying to get away, and this was close but also far. Mykonos is a gorgeous place, and this really quick story was we had some free time and we went to go get dinner, and we walked down. It's me and my wife and Pat and Vicky Gallagher, and we're walking down the street and we all smell this wonderful aroma. And so we walk in the shop, and Vicky was the co-leader on this trip with me. She's also a PhD in communication. You think she knows her way how to walk into a room and get a table when there's no table? She does. So she walks in and she's like, "Oh my gosh, this smells amazing. Is there a place where we can sit and see the sun go down over the windmills?" And the woman's like, "Well, no, up here is just the bar. The restaurant's downstairs and there's no view down there. So it's up here." "Okay, well, can you order food in the bar?" "Well, no, ma'am, we actually don't have any food in the bar. This is just a bar downstairs. This is where the food is." We're like, "Oh, okay, thank you. We're just visiting, and we were just really hoping to get a view, but if that's all you have, okay, thank you very much." We start walking away. She grabs Vicky by the arm, play this video, takes us out of the restaurant, takes us next door, opens it with a lock, walks up these stairs into her private living room, walks us out onto the balcony. Oh, she had trouble with the door. She needed Pat. Pat is very good with tall doors. Come on, Pat. Come on, Pat. Look at you go. Look at you friendly giant. And she gave us just the best table on her own private balcony, overlooking the windmills. And we had this server. You can go to the next one. We had this server who was very interesting from Albania, and it was just the best day. My wife's not in this picture because she took the picture, and it was quite a small balcony. I don't think she does this every day. And my meal was delicious once they stopped looking at me. They were quite good. But those black things that you see are eyeballs. But wasn't that a great day? That was a great day. On Santorini, we saw a lot of things, and I thought about for a long time, should I buy this shirt? I don't know, it's a linen shirt. Am I ever going to wear a linen shirt? I can't remember if I bought it or not, but I think maybe I did. Italy, Greece was really beautiful, and so I had written a grant that for 3 weeks I was going to do this with my wife, Greece and then Italy. And study the early church in Italy as well. And then my wife goes, "This is really great, but I don't get a sabbatical. Like, my boss doesn't care that you got a sabbatical." So I called my best friend, Stephen, a.k.a. Steve-O. Stephen and I have been best friends since 10th grade. And the great thing about having your best friend is that he ruins all your selfies. But you always have somebody to pretend like you're a wine connoisseur with. You always have someone to hang out with. And Stephen's also a pastor, so like when we go to the places like the Vatican, we got to be really reverent there, you know? I mean, just all of the times we were just reverent and in the honor, in the spirit of greatness. There were just so many great places that we could just be pastors, you know, for a little while. And we didn't feel like we had to be more, we prayed a lot at a lot of the sites. We just spent all of our time in constant prayer. We said that to our wives. They were not impressed at all. At all. In the Vatican, there's this beautiful painting that I don't have time to go into, but you can Google it. It's called The School of Athens by Raphael. And the way they tell stories in 2D is phenomenal to me. So this is basically the story of philosophy, okay? Now, School of Athens, but it was made in Rome, right? And it was made in Rome at the same time that Martin Luther's starting, right? Between 1509 and 1511, right? Martin Luther nails the 95 Theses in 1517, okay? And in this painting, he's got Socrates and Plato up at the top there, and they're kind of arm in arm. And Plato's the old guy with the sort of the pink, and Socrates is the young guy with the blue draped around him, right? He looks virile and young and just full of power. Well, we didn't know what any of these people looked like, so they put their favorite people in it. So it's actually Leonardo da Vinci playing Aristotle here with Socrates, right? So like stuff like that. And then this guy, there's so much in this picture that I don't have time to tell you, nor do I remember all of. But this guy right here, he painted last. Can you kind of feel that it was painted like it was added in later? This guy here is Michelangelo. And you get a story of Michelangelo that I had never heard. Michelangelo was gay. He was openly gay. And he was from Florence, where it was fine to be gay, or it was at least much more accepted to be gay in Florence. And when he goes to Rome, we think of those as Italy, but at the time they weren't. Those are different countries, right? There are different rules, different laws, right? It's how I feel when I go to my home state of Texas, right? It feels like it's just still the world I live in. Michelangelo is gay, and he's a strong introvert who really doesn't like people. And so he's kind of nasty to people all the time. Surely he spent a lot of his life rejected or something like that. He's definitely a tortured artist. He is an Enneagram 4 who leans 5, which is really a unicorn. There are not many people who do this in the Enneagram world, but he does. And then he gets a bad case of gout. He's already grumpy. He's already a tortured artist. He's already not accepted in Rome. He hates the Pope. The Pope hates him, but the Pope keeps paying him because he's Michelangelo, right? And he gets this bad case of gout, and he doesn't want to deal with it. And so his dad, who's the only friend he has in the world, his dad lives in Florence. His dad buys him a pair of what we would call cowboy boots, but leather boots. And you can see he has them on his leg. They come all the way up to here, and they cover up his gout. And the only problem is he never takes them off. So now he's the smelly, tortured artist who's gay and not accepted and grabby and mean to everybody. So, never heard that story of Michelangelo at all. Didn't know any of that. But then, for Raphael to paint all of these people wonderfully, and what is Michelangelo doing? Ignoring all of them, writing a letter home to his dad. So, just the way they can tell stories in 2D is just astounding to me. I love it. And Raphael puts himself, he doesn't consider himself one of the greats, but he's looking at you way up here. You see this guy's looking at you. It's the only guy looking at you. And so that Raphael put his self-portrait in there. But just an amazing piece of art. When we went into the Vatican and then you go into the Sistine Chapel, they tell you you're not allowed to take pictures at all. So I only took 3. But I really wanted a picture. So I'm walking around like this, click, click, click of the ceiling. And one guy's hand gets in front of me. I'm really, dude? Come on. But obviously, the creation of Adam here, this thing took Michelangelo 10 years. And one more story about Michelangelo, because I'm obsessed. When they start building St. Peter's Basilica, again, the same time as the Reformation, Michelangelo's an old guy now. He's 55 in a world that doesn't even typically live that far. He's got gout. He's got all of these issues. After he's done the Sistine Chapel, which took him 10 years to do, all the intricate painting on the ceiling, right? The Pope comes to him and says, listen, I want you to design the dome. Michelangelo had dabbled in other arts and things and structures, and so he could design the dome. And he's like, Pope, I don't want to do that. He's like, you must. You are Michelangelo, and I'm the Pope. And he says, it needs to be the greatest, biggest dome in all of Italy, in the whole world, biggest dome in all of Italy. Michelangelo's like, fine. He builds the dome. It takes another 6-7 years. He dies before it's completed. Then it's completed. 60 years later, an engineer gets up there and tells the then Pope, who's the son of the, or not the son of the Pope, but like, is moved on from that Pope. And he goes, I hate to tell you, but Michelangelo cheated you. He made your dome exactly 1 yard smaller than the Pantheon, which is the one I showed you earlier. Michelangelo did that as a screw you to the Pope. Like, that's a good joke. To me, that's a good joke. That joke took 60 years to come to fruition. I'm obsessed with Michelangelo. I don't know that we'd be friends, but I'd be here to see it. You know what I mean? Like, I would just watch him. I think artists are great. And the more tortured, the better. I don't know. We ate all the food that there was to eat. This is called a Florentine steak. Apparently, they forget to cook the middle of it when they serve it to you, but it was really good. And all the pasta. I did embarrass myself only once when I tried to order lasagna in the southern part of Italy, where you can't order lasagna because it's from Bologna, which is sort of in the middle and toward the top of Italy, and they don't make lasagna in the south. And you're like, well, that's dumb. And then I think, well, if I tried to go order barbecue in Maine, they would look at me really stupid, and I'd be really stupid for trying to order North Carolina barbecue in Maine, right? So it's another one of those things where you just don't think about it until you're there. So I just thought that was cool. We went to the house of Dante Alighieri in Florence. This is his actual bedroom, his actual house. He was kicked out of the city, and that's when he wrote his Divine Comedy, including Inferno. This was really important to me. I've said probably to you all before, I think Dante Alighieri's had a greater impact on American Christianity than Jesus of Nazareth has, because he's the one who talks about hell. He's the one who talks about eternal damnation. That is not in Scriptures. Jesus does not say these things. There is no afterlife hell that Jesus talks about. Jesus talks about Sheol, which is the land of the dead for the Hebrews. It is definitely not a Greco-Roman idea of Hades. He also uses the word Hades, but in a particular context. He also uses the word Gehenna, and in none of them does he mean the English word hell. You know how I know? Because the English word hell isn't invented until the year 1700, and Jesus wasn't alive then, right? So Dante was a really important stop for us. Stupid Stephen needed to go to a bookstore and buy the Divine Comedy in Italian. So we went to 7 bookstores. He's so pretentious sometimes. Well, we had a great time. Like I said, we've been best friends for 20 years, and we don't see each other a whole lot. You know, he lives in Charlotte, and I live here, and we both got kids and life and all that. So that was really good catching up time. Third goal of Sabbatical was family time, and here's a map of the domestic travel I did. Pretty much took the country. Pretty much, I didn't go back to Arizona or Texas, but we're doing that soon, so that'll be fine. I told you I went to Berkeley, California to visit Nathan, and I went up to Minnesota, which I'll tell about in a minute. But right now, that part of Florida right there, it's called Seagrove. It's outside of Destin, Florida. And some of you might remember my grandma died at the beginning of the pandemic. And at that event, we sort of agreed that we wanted to put together a family reunion. And so before I got the sabbatical grant, I had started planning. I'm now the person who plans the family reunions. But the grant paid for us to go to Universal. And as a family, this is the only one I have of all 5 of us there. But you can see that kids were really happy. It was a really fun, long, hot day. Got to go to Harry Potter World. Avery got picked by Ollivander, if you know what that means. We rode the roller coasters and had a great time. This is me and my dad and my brother hanging out on the beach. Just really great. You know, my brother lives in Arizona. He's got a 3rd kid on the way. My dad lives in Texas. We text every day, but we don't get to see each other. This is what the whole group looks like all together. There's 33 of us, and there were 3 babies in wombs. So 36 all told. And this was our silly picture. A Pew family get-together is a lot. It's loud. There's a lot of people talking at the same time. I come from a long line of storytellers. And sometimes we all tell the same story. But it was really joyful, just absolutely joyful. It's my sister there in the white and pink in the middle next to Ashley, and then my sister-in-law next to him, and my parents on the couch. And Grandpa, you can see Thomas has got his eyes going up, and these are our cousins and other people. And then my dad's cousins and my Uncle David and my Uncle Dale and his girlfriend Stephanie are there. And my cousin Austin with the idiot mustache, and he's got like the handlebar. It was a whole thing. We kept asking him if he knew where we could find a gym where we use only medicine balls, or where we could buy a bicycle where one wheel was bigger than the other. We teased him endlessly. This is a picture that I took of my brother and his girls. It's great. It's great seeing my little brother as a dad. You know, that was just really great. And Grandpa turned 89, and this is a picture I took on his birthday. We got to celebrate his birthday, and he told about 7 or 8 stories that kind of all looped together. But he still got to the ping pong table, and he still beat us in ping pong at 89. Great family time. Also, you know, we just couldn't help but take all the pictures and stuff, and just a bunch of hanging out time. You know, this is my niece Cora explaining a game to everybody. She's 4 and knows how to play this game better than we do. So she's just sort of explaining it, just kind of hanging out. This is me and the sassy girls. These are my nieces here, and they were teaching me how to make a duck face. This is a thing. You make duck faces for pictures, so we did that. This is a bunch of other guys hanging out. You see my idiot cousin with his idiot handlebar mustache there. And then these are my dad's cousins on the outside that we've grown closer over the last couple years. So anyway, just really, really great family time. And just soaked up the sun, and, you know, we sang and we danced, and there was the kids put on a play, and we played ping pong, and we played pool, and all those things. Really great. 4th goal of Sabbatical was worship. It's a rare thing to have months off as a pastor to go spy on other churches and judge them. And I took advantage of that opportunity. This is where I went to Hope, which is a mega church here in Raleigh. Their stage setup is epic. Look at all of those lights. It feels like you're at a rock concert. It was interesting, and then they put the sermon on the screen, and I left because I'm not here for that. The number of churches I walked out of, it's about half. This is me with my friend, Pastor Marcia Anderson. And I put the house up there to remind me to tell you, this is my home church. This is the church where I was confirmed, and we've had some visitors from there in the last month where I said, hey, I'm Pastor Daniel. They said, we know who you are. We knew you when you were like this. So it was great to go see them. They're doing great. My buddy, Pastor Ben at Grace in Raleigh, I got to go watch him preach. He and I went to seminary together in Berkeley, so it was great to do that. When I was out in California, I went to Nathan's church to watch what they do. Their tech is better than ours, but their contemporary is not better than ours. So that was good. I tried to go to Elevation Worship in Morrisville until I realized that it meets in a movie theater, which I knew. But I thought there'd be like a house band, like we were just meeting in a movie theater. It's just a movie. And they just put the service on the screen. So I was like, this is dumb, I'm leaving. And then I was like, I should take a picture. And so I took a picture while I was walking. So it's a really bad picture of me walking out of this. I was like, you know, I know I'm already not going to love the theology, so like, why am I, you know what I mean? Like, there's not even a house band. So I walked out, and you know, they've got this like visitor thing down. Like they had already like counted me as a visitor, and like so somebody's like catching me on my way out the door, and they're like, "Is everything okay? Is everything okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I gotta go. I went up to Minnesota to visit some friends, and I took the opportunity to check in on Cindy Wilkie's home church of Lord of Life in Maple Grove. This is Pastor Peter. He's the pastor emeritus there. I met Pastor Peter when I did senior pastor training right before the pandemic. and it was great to see him worship and spend some time with him. We also consulted with him when we had a pastoral transition team, when Pastor Wolfgang and I were trying to figure out the thing that made me executive pastor now, like what to do in this time. And so we had talked to him and his predecessor on Zoom 2 summers ago. So it was great to see him in person and worship here. This was a traditional service, and it was great. And of course, everywhere I went, Mark Hartman, I asked to see the tech booth. This is the one in California, and this is the one in Maple Grove. I think that's right. So I came back with a lot of tech ideas, and you're going to see some of that and made it in the stewardship budget. So how about that? Sabbatical goal number 5, the last one, was to relax. This is me sitting on my hammock. I came back from Italy with COVID. I'm absolutely convinced the Catholics gave me in the Vatican. They saw there's a Lutheran pastor here, let's give him COVID. Literally the day we got to the Vatican at 7 o'clock in the morning, they announced that at 6 o'clock they had made the decision that people did not have to wear masks inside the Vatican as of 6 a.m. I'm not kidding you. They saw me coming, they gave me COVID, and they sent me home. But it did force me to rest, which is not something that I'm good at, sitting down and resting. One of those days, I decided to rug doctor the entire house. So I went and rented a rug doctor, and and just sort of went to town on that. Ash and I celebrated our 16th wedding anniversary, so we were able to go sit outside and do that, and got to rekindle a friendship with my buddy Travis, and we went to a concert and saw Omar. We saw Omar at that concert. And then we took a little trip to Minnesota at the very end of the sabbatical. We have some really dear friends from, remember when I say seminary, what I really mean is grad school, right? I was 24, 25, 26, 27, and these were the people that we bonded with the most. And now we all have kids, and so we're trying to get together every other year, and COVID has pushed that back, and so we were like, we're doing it. And I got to pick last time, and we went to the Outer Banks, and so this time Eric and Megan got to pick, and they chose the northern end of the Lake Superior. So we're about an hour and a half from Canada in a place called Lutz in Minnesota on the way to Grand Marais. So we went to hang out with them, and I didn't have everybody in one picture. But poor Ashley put up with all of this sabbatical, and she loves all of these kids. But this group is 5 pastors and Ashley. So there's like a little bit of shop talk going on. And when we went to Maple Grove, my buddy Eric got up at 4:30 in the morning and drove down, and Kirsten drove over from Wisconsin to go to church so that we could all 3 worship together. And that was just really meaningful. Then we went to we went to Duluth, and this is Eric's son Milo, who I'm absolutely in love with, and he was in love with the moose, so we got a picture of the 3 of us. And then we went to Mall of America, went in Minnesota, and that was that was sort of the end of it. The last day of sabbatical was on the calendar, and when it came, I couldn't believe it. I took a picture of my shoes, which were brand new at the beginning of the sabbatical. And the shoes told a lot of story, and when I got back, my desk was just as I left it, with a couple of notes from people, and one from Dr. Chris Furr, who was like, hey, I think you're my supervisor, please call me. You've been gone for the entire time I've been here. That's the note on the monitor there. Well, what did I learn, just quickly? Churches are changing. Things are changing, and you have to be flexible in this world. Worship has to be of a high quality. I found myself having very little patience for things that weren't being done well. Sermons needed to be real about life. Anytime somebody talked about the blessed Theotokos or, Cyrillian Theopaschae Christology, I was ready to walk out. And I studied that stuff, and I'm ready to walk out. So how do we make church and sermons real? I think some of you have seen that in my preaching since I've come back. Just a renewed sense in how is this relatable. Churches are dying. A lot of the churches I went to were like half of what I expected. I still am convinced more than ever that the gospel has a lot to teach us. The good news that Jesus Christ is Lord, and that it doesn't matter who's in power or what they say, the right thing to do is the right thing to do, and also that you are known and loved and valid and seen and cared for, and you need people. All of those things I believe even stronger than I ever did before, and I realized that of all the churches I went to visited, there were no place I'd rather be other than here at CTK. There were some that I thought was like, oh, this might be a cool place to be, but coming back through the doors here, I was like, man, this is a great church, and I don't take this place for granted. I know you don't either. This is a special thing we got going, and we're going to hold on to it. The other thing I realized that I've been meditating on a lot is what I'm calling first-class privilege. This is me in first class on the train. And everywhere I went, people talked to me in English. Everywhere I went. Nowhere was I forced to learn the language. Everywhere I went, they gave us the best table that they could or something like that. Everywhere I went, one time I came in, I said, we have a reservation. They said, we can't find the reservation. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, but I think our hotel called yesterday and made a reservation. And they said, oh, well, I've got a table for you. Sat us down. Somebody walks in right behind us. They said, do you have a reservation? And they said, oh, no, sorry. He said, sorry, we can't help you. Send them away. Right? So there were just a number of times that became a present for me, in addition to having a $50,000 grant and a place where I worked that was willing to give me 3 months off. I felt a lot of that privilege traveling around the country, seeing the way people with skin color like mine were treated versus other people. A good amount of racism toward Asians in Italy. I felt a little bit of racism toward Asian people in Italy. Everywhere I went, I was treated like a king, and others weren't. And so I'm even more committed to, the least I can do is be an ally, right? Like the least I can do as a cis white male with a bunch of privilege is just to be an ally in the world and in the community. And so I think that's pretty low-hanging fruit, honestly, for anybody who identifies as I do, as someone with a lot of first-class privilege. It's just to show up and be an ally, right? It's not that hard. Learn some pronouns. We're going to take some anti-racism training, and we're going to continue on this journey because it's literally the least we can do. And so we're going to start with the least we can do and work our way up from there. On the whole, Sabbatical's a 10 out of 10. Would highly recommend. The first thing I did when I got back was meet with my financial planner and up my retirement savings so I can get back to doing this. You retired people, I get it. I was worried about what it was going to be like to be away. I sometimes over-identify with my role as being a pastor as an identity piece. I was worried about leaving that behind. Turns out, I'm delightful to hang out with, just myself. I don't need anybody else. I didn't need to preach to anybody. I didn't need to do any of it. Obviously, I love what I do, and it was great coming back. Last slide, 88 out of 88. One of my favorite memories was here in Athens. The Acropolis, which is that big thing on top that you see, which is gorgeous, has next to it this place called Mars Hill. And in the book of Acts, Paul stands on Mars Hill and preaches arguably his most famous sermon called The Shrine to the Unknown God. And in it, he tells the people of Athens, I've seen all of your great statues and all of your great shrines to all of your gods, and I saw one that's to the unknown God, and I'm here to tell you about that unknown God. And it's a masterpiece. This was hallowed ground for me, and it just so happens that day was a rather boring tour guide that we were given for the day, and she asked me if I wanted to say something, so mostly to get her to stop talking, I took the microphone and I just said what was on my heart, which was, I saw a world that was so interconnected. I mean, you go to all of these places and we're all dealing with COVID the same way. I saw a tribute to George Floyd on the wall of a building in Athens. I saw "We Stand with Ukraine" flags in Italy. I saw people loving people all over the world. I saw interconnectedness, and I am absolutely convinced that that sermon will still preach. Let me tell you about the God that you don't know. Because the God that I know loves each and every one of us so unconditionally that God loves us just the way you are, and God loves you too much to let you stay that way. So, great time on sabbatical, and I hope you learned some things. Don't have a lot of time for questions, but we got through the slide deck by 10:45, so God bless y'all. Thanks for coming out. Got a little bit more apple tea if you didn't get a chance to try it. We have apple tea from Ephesus up here.